The board of directors also, prior to COVID, had decided that they wanted to go from a 40-bed facility, 20 individual, 20 double rooms, to a 60-bed individual room facility.
It's not the best use of resources, I don't think, for 77 municipalities all to head out and talk to their solicitors.
Every weekend, it is almost impossible to get a ferry ticket if you haven't booked weeks out.
Welcome to This Week Uncut, where we take a look at the week's top stories from CHCO-TV and The Courier. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.
We begin this week in St. Andrews with a response to the Local Governance Commission's advisory on Code of Conduct and Conflict of Interest meetings, and that they couldn't be held in closed session.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the background on the advisory itself.
So this advisory came out in December of 2025, and since then people have started sort of discovering that mayors and councillors are not employees of the municipality, and that year we had a code of conduct complaint in St. Andrews, and I distinctly remember the former mayor Brett Henderson saying, I wish that we could say more. I think he said the lack of details that are being provided I find very frustrating, and at the time I had assumed, because throughout my career that's sort of how they've been handled. The discussion happens in closed, and then they come out and they vote to accept or determine that the code of conduct complaint is unfounded. And so that was the process that sort of played out here. But clearly what happens is that there often leads to speculation about what that person may have been accused of. And so we decided that we would look into that, and we would investigate how many closed meetings had happened with relation to code of conduct in the last 2 years. And we understand that closed session shouldn't have happened that way.
Right. So when you looked at the number of closed sessions, what were the numbers like?
Yeah, so Eastern Charlotte, I believe, had the most of all of the councils in terms of closed sessions and code of conduct complaints. One of them was related to a staff member, which would fall under the exemption of labor and employment matters because they are employed by the town. Again, St. Andrews had that one code of conduct complaint, and then St. Stephen also had one that was held and closed. They recently went ahead and changed their code of conduct bylaw to remove references to closed session with the exception of solicitor or lawyer advice. And now St. Andrews is also working to redraft a code of conduct bylaw, and that's sort of where this statement originated.
Okay. And so the Local Governments Commission is saying what about these code of conduct meetings, that they should be held openly, and what exactly were the details of the advisory that were sent out to the municipalities?
Yeah, so it cited a couple examples of case law that show that mayors and councillors are not members of the municipality. The only exception to these meetings would be that solicitor advice that we just talked about. And so when we did the story, we reached out to all of the municipalities on the same day. We got a response from Eastern Charlotte, we got a response from St. Stephen, but we did not receive a response from the town of St. Andrews. And so the town of St. Andrews was given 6 days by email, and then I followed up again. And then at a staff-led meeting, I also approached the chief administrative officer, and I said, listen, I'm planning to publish tomorrow. Can I have a response? The response didn't come. I waited another 12 hours before publishing, just in case it came in between that time. I understand that the staff are busy. And so a response didn't come. And so this statement that they released was in response both to the inquiry that I made, but also the advisory from the commission. And their response or what their thoughts were to what the commission is saying.
Okay, and this came after the publication of your story, Behind Closed Doors, which was an in-depth look at this issue itself that you didn't get a response from the town for. But then they did put out a statement, a press release. What did the statement say?
So the statement was long, I think about a page and a half, and it outlined the concerns about the creation of the Code of Conduct bylaw itself. And so the town, who, by the way, has been doing this under the impression that they were allowed to do it, said that the Department of Local Government had made a change and they did not communicate that change to them through the proper channels, and so they continued to operate as normal. And then now they're sort of sitting here sort of trying to understand how they create this code of conduct bylaw by going to municipal legal counsel, reviewing other councils who have already made some changes to their code of conduct bylaw, but they're asking for a standardized process from the Department of Local Government. Now, the commission is an independent body that sort of is in its infancy. It's only about a year and a half old, and so it's sort of like an oversight, like a third party oversight body that is working. So the commission is not the Department of Local Government, but the Department of Local Government created municipalities, and so they want that department to come up with something that is standard, something that works across the board, because in the absence of that, it's going to be challenging because other people are going to interpret the law differently, which is what we saw in the first place.
Which one of the main misinterpretations is that the councillors and the mayors were considered staff members by the municipality, and in the eyes of the commission, that's not the case. That was one of the main misinterpretations, I understand.
Exactly. And so when a lawyer looks at something like this, they're going to think, okay, well, maybe this is my interpretation, and another lawyer might think something else. And so they really want the department to sort of step up and create a standardized process or a formalized process that all councils can get at. And we're going to talk a little bit about my interview with Jeff Martin, but there's 77 municipalities, and so there's room for interpretation and there's room for variances across the 77 municipalities.
Let's say you spoke with Mount Allison Professor Jeff Martin about this and the statement from the town of St. Andrews. So what was that conversation like? What did he have to say?
Well, we spoke to Jeff as part of the original investigation, and so I thought going back to him would sort of be a natural way to kind of encompass the whole picture, to include the town of St. Andrews in that coverage. And he actually agreed with the town on creating a new process.
My first response would be that I do think the town of St. Andrews makes a good point, which is that it's not the best use of resources, I don't think, for 77 municipalities all to head out and talk to their solicitors and come up with amendments, and who knows how many different directions they'll go in. I think this is and what kind of patchwork will exist, because what if they don't do it? I mean, there could eventually be a judgment saying, you did it wrong because you didn't follow our advice and change your process. I do think that someone in Fredericton should come up with a template. This is our recommended way of dealing with these issues. And part of it too is that I think a lot of the municipalities are relatively new, and this is a kind of yet another administrative burden they don't necessarily need. And I think the other thing too is that it would be good if the provincial government said, okay, here's a template. We've consulted our legal people and our local government people in the department regarding how this should be done. This is how we think it should be done. And I think there's a lot of new administrators out there and new councillors who will have a hard time getting their head around this issue when they've got so many other things to deal with, because what I think one of the issues with the creation of the new system is that we did create these new municipalities. We did expand. We had a process by which, in many cases, facilitator picked they pick chief administrative officers and so on, and they didn't always come from a municipal background. So, and they don't necessarily come from a legal background. So we're talking about some kind of complicated mechanisms here. And that whole question too of whether how well qualified are, are all the clerks out there equally well qualified to deal with this issue. So I do think, yeah, do think it would save a lot of time and difficulty if the provincial government was to do this, whether it's whether it's the Commission on Local Governance or the ministry. So I think there's a good point made there by the municipality.
We talked about the Department of Local Government's involvement more generally, but also how they could help in creating bylaws like this one.
I think there's a whole history of the local government branch being fairly hands-off, and certainly when I heard about the Commission on Local Governance's a ruling or opinion on this matter, I was kind of concerned about the complications of implementing what they're saying, and the mechanisms of well, instead of making a decision in public about a peer, and I always thought that what provincial governments have, or what you find elsewhere in North America, or at the provincial and state level and national level in Canada, the United States, is it's that question of privileges of the elected member. So there's often a process like a privileges process that they go through to address wrongdoing by a member or alleged wrongdoing by a member. Like sometimes there's there's an ethics committee or there's a privileges committee, and I do wonder if they solved this problem, or has this problem been solved in other jurisdictions in this country for the municipal level, and it would be much easier for the provincial government, whether it's the commission or whether it's the ministry, it would be much better if they did the research on this than having 77 municipalities trying to put the resources into doing the research and duplicating a lot of effort. And as I say, possibly going off in who knows what kind of direction, because it would be nice if there was a standard template and most municipalities accepted it or only tweaked it in the most minor ways. And then it would be nice if these kinds of complaints went away, that we wouldn't have this reinventing of the wheel kind of thing going on, and that we could get on to other things besides dealing with the controversy over these complaints. In the sense that at least there would be an agreed process as to how to deal with them.
I think a lot of your coverage of this has really given people a lot of insight into the complexities of local government. So I applaud you on your work on this. What did the department have to say about the release? Well,
the department said what we expected them to say, which is that this change was done post amalgamation, and they said that they did communicate that change to municipalities. So there is a discrepancy between what the Department of Local Government is saying and what the town of St. Andrews is saying. So we included both of those perspectives. They also said that each local government would be responsible for contacting legal counsel on creating those bylaws. They're sort of a body that doesn't make decisions or rulings for these governments, and so they're going to have to make these decisions for themselves.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to follow where this goes, especially with, once again, we have elections on the horizon as well.
Well, that's exactly it. So in May, there is a whole new crop of municipal leaders that are going to be at the table. We heard the commission ask for mandatory training. No word on that yet, sort of where that stands. So now we have this other issue about code of conduct and sort of how they conduct themselves when they get a code of conduct or a conflict of interest complaint or allegation. And so it's going to be tricky to sort of bring these folks in and say, listen, this is how we operate, because we don't actually have a foundation to start off. So we're going to continue to watch this story.
All right. And the great thing about this show is that we are going over the complexities of municipal government. So at least by watching this, we'll bring you along for the ride as we encounter all of the challenges and nuances of working in local government.
we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, the crew heads to Grand Manan Island to talk to Mayor Bonnie Morse.
We're probably the only community in the province that our biggest barrier to development, either economic or social, is the province and is the fact that our ferry capacity just can't keep up with it.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. So Vicki, you, Patrick, and Jonathan went to Grand Manan Island. There might be something from Good Day from the Bay brewing. What did you head over there for?
So the main purpose of the trip was to visit 102-year-old Vera Green and her 6 generations of family, which was really such a special day. Jonathan and I went over to film our hour-long show, Good Day from the Bay, with the whole family. Can't think of a better setting for Good Day from the Bay, being right on the Bay of Fundy on this beautiful island. It was Jonathan's first trip to Grand Manan ever, so that was exciting in itself. I said, if you love it in February, wait till you come in summer. So we started the day off with Vera and her family. I don't want to spoil too much. It was very special, so look for the next episode of Good Day from the Bay. We were at Vera's daughter Sheila's house for about 3 hours with the whole family filming. And then we went to the village office to meet up with Mayor Bonnie Morse for an episode of Town and Province. But while we were on the ferry, we took the 9:30 ferry over. Bonnie Morse sent me a message, said, you might be on the ferry with our new fire truck. So I sent a picture because I saw them in line. I said, is this it? Of course it was. So I got to post that for the island to see. I got to spoil the surprise a little bit. But of course we took the ferry, which was a big part of the conversation with Mayor Morse, because obviously that is the only way to and from the island, other than if you took a plane. But it's definitely their lifeline to the mainland.
So what is the situation for islanders right now with terms of the Grand Manan 5 and the Adventure?
Okay, so the Grand Manan 5 is 36 years old, so it's had a life already. It's a smaller ship as well. So the Grand Manan Adventure being 15 years old, it's time to start thinking about what comes next. Now, here's some other obstacles. This is wonderful news. The population of the island is continuing to increase. But at the same time, we've seen things like services, like the bank closing down. The only bank, Scotiabank, closed down a few years ago. We covered that extensively. And when a service leaves the island, islanders often have to go to the mainland as well. So there's complications like that, but there's things people don't often think about if they're not islanders, such as sporting events. It's a very athletic island. It's a huge part of growing up on the island, is getting involved in sports. Saturdays, if you've ever taken the ferry over on the weekend, sometimes you'll see teams from the city coming in, so it's a real home court advantage once you've had them on the ferry for a ride for a ride over before they play something like basketball. But that's an issue. Bonnie was saying that you have to book the ferry days in advance. There's families that want to go over and support the kids on the road, teams that are playing, and it's complicating life on that level too.
Yeah, so the Grand Manan Adventure, I remember distinctly, is also having problems, but the issue with that is that the Grand Manan 5 is also under repair, but also smaller than the Adventure. So, like, how is that? How do they move forward then if both ferries are sort of, not reliable in the sense that they should be?
This is going to be up to the province. And David Kuhn, the leader of the Green Party, was here last week, and he mentioned he had been over to the island as well. And when he went back to Fredericton, he told Premier Holt, you're going to need to get a new ferry. And that was in our interview with David Kuhn. So look for that as well if you are following ferry news to the island. Again, we talk about Campobello a lot on this show too, and their desire for a year-round ferry. It's one of the issues we cover a lot in this part of the world. We have beautiful islands, but as Mayor Moore said in the interview, they are at the mercy of the province with what to do next, and that is their barrier to growth sometimes. We have huge fishing industries over there too, so when you're on the ferry, you're often with these huge trucks bringing seafood to the mainland. So there's a lot at stake here if they can't get to and from the island as regularly as they need to.
Well, and seafood is a big part of the province's adventures in Europe in terms of their economic growth and their move to be more independent from the United States. So Grand Manan would be at center stage for that.
And that is in our conversation too. So you're going to get on this show a preview of our sit down with Mayor Morris. We talked about tariffs and what's happening in the seafood industry, how that's affecting islanders as well. But the ferry, no matter what, is a part of all aspects of life on Grand Manan, and that includes the seafood industry. Here is my discussion about the ferries to Grand Manan with Mayor Bonnie Morris on the island.
The Grand Manan 5 started service here in 1990, so it is 36 years old. The Grand Manan Adventure is 15 years old, so even our new ferry is getting some years on it. And the Grand Manan 5, obviously being 36 years old, it needs either significant repairs or we need a replacement ferry for it. And more importantly, I think for the community as a whole, with both ferries, they just are not able to keep up with the demand for travel that we're seeing now. Our population has increased over the last, it had increased in the last census, and I expect it'll be up again in the census in 2026, which is a good thing, because that's what you want to see in rural communities in particular. You know, you see populations decrease, and so when you see that trend not happening, it's a good thing. We have businesses that are developing that are they're talking about bringing on an additional 50 workers. But that means 50 more people and potentially families that will also be requiring travel on the ferry, to say nothing of the product from the business that also needs to be shipped on the ferry. We're probably the only community in the province that our biggest barrier to development, either economic or social, is the province and is the fact that our ferry capacity just can't keep up with it. Nowhere else do they worry that, oh, I hope my road's big enough for this product or for these new people that are moving to town. But that's the situation that we're in here on Grand Manan. We have such a great group of volunteers, and I mean, sports is a really big thing here in the winter. I mean, you talk about it being the off season, and for Grand Manan, basketball and hockey and watching kids sports is a really big deal for us. We have 11 basketball teams through the school system, plus another 5 hockey teams that are all playing actively, competitively on the mainland. But what that means is those teams are traveling. And so every weekend, it is almost impossible to get a ferry ticket if you haven't booked weeks out. People are standing, like we have a standby list for the ferry, and that's like up to 20 to 25 people for Saturday morning at 7:30 crossing, because there's so many teams that are traveling. There's so many studies that talk about, you know, the benefits of sports for youth and for activities and all those things. And doing that from Grand Manan is challenging, but the biggest barrier to sport shouldn't be the ability to travel off the island to go play those games. And that's what we're seeing more and more of. And until we have a replacement for the 5 that has a larger capacity, that can assume the winter runs that the Adventure is now doing, that's able to transport our lobster, our seafood, salmon, all of those things to market, as well as the people that live here, that's going to be what stifles the growth of our community going forward.
And I will say my high school basketball team was one of the most fundamental building blocks of me growing up, and I wouldn't change that for anything, so for sure.
Exactly, and I mean, we want our kids here to have those opportunities. And if people are considering moving to Grand Manan, that's one of the things they're looking for, like, can my child participate in activities? Are there things to do? And so, you know, to have all these volunteer parents who are stepping up that are coaching, we want to be able to continue those programs and to see those go forward. So, you know, hopefully we'll see some movement. We continue to work with the province. We have a working group that we meet several times a year. We talk about this, but we need to start seeing some movement and to see some progress going forward on what the replacement for the Grand Manan 5 is going to look like.
That was Mayor Bonnie Morris of Grand Manan talking about the challenges of the ferries to the island.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to look at an ongoing request to build a new long-term care facility in St. Andrews.
Despite people saying, well, it costs more. Well, yeah, it costs more, and it costs a lot more if you kill somebody with germs.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.
So Town Council in St. Andrews recently had a discussion about the land on which the Passamaquoddy Lodge Foundation wants to build its new long-term care facility off the Bar Road.
Okay, I know this has been a discussion for a while now. Tell us a little bit about what the latest is.
Well, I actually remember covering this when I was at Global News. So that's, that would have been almost 2 years ago now. But it was even before I was working in St. John. But this idea was born out of COVID-19. Essentially, they started to realize that when an isolation order came to a long-term care facility, it meant everyone had to isolate, regardless if they were COVID positive or not. And we do know that there are studies to support and suggest that rates of depression in seniors in long-term care facilities went up because they couldn't see their loved ones, because they were isolated sometimes for months and months at a time, and that led to poor health outcomes and arguably the death of many seniors across the country. And so the Passamaquoddy Lodge Foundation envisioned this idea where there would be sort of separate sections of the long-term care facility, and so if there was an infection that was sort of in one part of the facility, it wouldn't need to restrict the seniors in the other parts. And so this was a big idea, and it's certainly not something that we sort of have in New Brunswick. A lot of the long-term care facilities are just ginormous facilities that have rooms and space. But the other thing is that the current space that they have is no longer suitable. It often is difficult to get wheelchairs through doors. So it needs to be replaced no matter what. And I will say that there are many long-term care facilities across the province that are looking to be replaced or looking to have renovations. But certainly this is one that's sort of been just dragging along now between two successive governments.
And I know, we are in this part of the world, so we have extra excitement about the idea of this getting underway for a lot of reasons. I also want to see how something like this could impact positively a community, because the plan is also to have a daycare facility on site to intermingle generations and see what positive impact that can have too, because we love the idea of what COVID-19 informed about being able to close off certain areas while keeping a communal space for socializing, but also keeping people safe if there is an illness, but then also intermingling the community into the day-to-day lives of the residents of the long-term care home. And I think it would be so beautiful. I know I'm biased because it would be right here, just to get to see how that impacts people's lives positively. So for that reason, I'm very excited to see what comes next. You'll remember too, just before Christmas, we had Bob Carney in the studio, who's a resident of the lodge, telling us about why he even gives more to help out with the lodge, because he loves where he lives now, but he also can't wait to see how lives could improve. There are things like old doors there that can't fit wheelchairs through properly. And there's a lot that is really outdated and needs to change. But I'm giving way more background just for people at home to explain why, for all of us who've been covering this, we know all the details. We have been covering this for quite some time.
Yeah, and so the discussion that sort of happened at council is about the agreement the town has with the Passamaquoddy Lodge Foundation for the land off the Bar Road. This is an expensive project. And so that land, my understanding, based on that discussion, is being given to the foundation for $1. And so they want a commitment of, so my understanding also is that that commitment is coming to an end. Or potentially it's because of the election in May that they're they sort of want an extra commitment now. And so the commitment that they were asking for was 5 years. So to commit to giving that land to the Passamaquoddy Lodge Foundation for 5 years. And Councillor Darrell Weir said he had heard in the community that the attitude of the council, or the messaging from the council on the lodge, had changed. And so he wanted to clarify what that was. And so we heard from a few councillors who were talking about that extension and that agreement. And I would be challenged to think that there would be a council that wouldn't be in support of this project. But the project has sort of dragged on and dragged on and dragged on. And the councillor's criticism, at least Steve Neal to some degree, was, I don't want to tie the hands of two separate councils. If we do 2 years, then it sort of goes into the next council, but they can also decide in the middle of their term how they want to move forward. But 5 years would encompass all of the next council's term and then 1 year of the next council's term. And so that was a bit of their discussion. Take a listen.
There's been some feedback around town about whether the town continues to support Passamaquoddy Lodge. I tried to look in the minutes, but there's no minutes. When we passed the minutes earlier tonight, I didn't have a copy, so I didn't vote for them. But then I just looked on my electronic copy of the package, and they're not on the electronic one either.
Closed meeting discussion.
Closed meeting.
Okay. Anyway, but the messaging that got out on Passamaquoddy Lodge, or appears to have gotten out, is that we have backed off a bit on supporting the lodge and their rebuild. My recollection of the meeting was that we just sort of deferred it. Perhaps Councillor Gumashel could add some comments. I know he's gotten some feedback. So,
Yes, through your worship. Yes, thank you, Councillor Weir. I had similar feedback from the public, people wondering about the town's commitment to the lodge moving forward. I think it's key that the town continues to offer that land at $1 and the services put in as part of the presentation to the province that says that the town is 100% behind this rebuild of a new facility that will add spots for, it'll be 60 beds, but there'll be another 30 spots for people to, I'm not sure the exact word, but people who aren't into full care, like day trippers.
Transition.
In transition, thank you. And the lodge is also a very significant employer in our community, one of the larger ones. And certainly, as I near the end of my mandate, I would love to give that extra boost of confidence to the lodge that they've asked for in the form of renewing a 5-year commitment for their with their agreement as dated December 23rd, to renew our commitment to their rebuild. Thank you, Councillor Weir and Council.
Thank you, Councillor Gumashel and Councillor Weir. I don't think we said that we were not going to support, but Councillor Deputy Mayor Neal?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I guess my understanding from that was, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but we, again, are still in full support of Passamaquoddy Lodge. And again, that land is still available to them. But it was just that we didn't want to handcuff the next two councils without having them, or giving them the opportunity, I guess, for a bit of input. But I didn't see our commitment to them wavering in any way. And I think that, again, was communicated to the board of Passamaquoddy Lodge.
If I may, if you don't mind, can I read the exact email I sent?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
So, written to two members of the board who had asked about what the decision was. We just brought it to council on Monday, the first meeting since we received the letter. Although council still strongly supports the project, they do not feel they have the moral authority to make an agreement of this magnitude so late in their term to commit land for a project that is still awaiting a sustainable financial model. However, they did specify that if the board received the financial commitment from the province over the next 2 to 3 months, they then would be agreeable to transferring the land. They do encourage the board to resubmit the letter to the new council in June, who may be willing to come up with an arrangement that meets your needs. I'm sorry this is not the answer you were looking for, but it is typical in the winter of an election year. As the board continues to work through the project, council will lend support where they can to send this over the finish line.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear. Council, you agree?
Did we receive any feedback to that letter?
Not formally, nothing in writing.
Thank you. It may be too new. Councillor Gumshoe.
Thank you, Worship. If I may, I think in the original letter, and I'm sorry I didn't pick up on this sooner, but they were saying that this is kind of key, looking at their original letter. It's a draft of option agreement for a 5-year term, which would allow us to purchase the lands and to present. We have been in continuous negotiation with the province, et cetera, et cetera. So they wouldn't have asked for it if they didn't need it. I think if on a decision this large that we should vote, and therefore I'd like to vote that we give them that 5-year agreement that they requested.
That was the Town of St. Andrews Council discussing their support of the Passamaquoddy Lodge Foundation for building a new facility in St. Andrews.
I will be honest, I usually hear the rumblings of the community. People are great to reach out with their concerns at all time. And this is not a concern I've actually heard, that people thought that the town wasn't in support of the Passamaquoddy Lodge. So it's not something that's come in my earshot. But
well, you would have heard a part of that discussion was that there is a belief, at least on the part of the foundation, that having a long-term commitment may move the needle with the province in order to move forward and receive the proper funding that they need to sort of get this project off the ground. I don't know if that's true or not. I reached out to Caroline Davies and I asked her if we could have a discussion next week. So I'm waiting to hear from her, because she's sort of been the spokesperson for the foundation.
Is there any word from the province at this point in time?
Well, I did ask for an interview with the minister, the new minister for seniors, Lynn Chantal Boudreau. They said that was not possible, and they gave me a statement saying that they're sort of still looking into it, and they would not be able to comment on any aspect of the project at this time. So nothing, effectively, and so that's going to be a frustrating answer both for the foundation, for the people of St. Andrews, for the people of Charlotte County, and obviously for the council as well.
We're going to continue to follow this story, but Carolyn Davies recently did a presentation to the community about where the project currently stands.
We are also looking to incorporate in our proposal an area to support aging in place. As I said earlier today, I hadn't really thought about the picture I chose when I started this slide. That is a urban setting. I realize we are not in an urban setting. But I sort of like the picture because it does connotate that you're going somewhere positive. So we've done a lot of work. We started in 2017 looking to better integrate Passamaquoddy Lodge in the community to see if we could offer more services to allow people to stay in their homes and stay healthy in their homes. That led us to the age-friendly initiative that saw the town get recognized as an age-friendly community in 2019, which was fabulous, and has seen some tremendous improvements in the community, whether it's by the town itself or by groups in the community, that all of it's positive. The board of directors also, prior to COVID, had decided that they wanted to go from a 40-bed facility, 20 individual, 20 double rooms, to a 60-bed individual room facility. And I still think that is where we have to go. Despite people saying, well, it costs more. Well, yeah, it costs more, and it costs a lot more if you kill somebody with germs. At the time, the government was into the 3P, private-public partnership, and we wanted to keep this as a community-driven, community-owned nursing home. So we hired a company, EXP, to look at what we could do to renovate to add on to the existing facility. When we presented this to the government, they said, don't renovate, build new, and you can stay as a community-based, community-owned facility. So that was music to our ears. We started briefing the government on what we were trying to do in 2021. We said they could use us to inform their long-term care strategy. I think they are using us, but it's a slow process. In 2021, we also went to the town and said, could we They set aside 13 acres for us at the corner of Bar Road and Champlain Drive. And we need that much space to accommodate what we are proposing, just because we want to have a courtyard in the middle, and we want to have, grounds, and we want to have an area where kids can play, and people feel that they're looking out in their own backyard and they're not looking out at an institution. We've worked with Murdoch Boyd Architects in St. John. We've worked with Iron Maple Constructors. I can never get their title right. Out of Sussex. The Murdoch Boyd are the ones who have drawn the schematics and done the renderings that you've seen on the side. Iron Maple gave us a Class D estimate, which is your most basic estimated cost of what it would be to build a new facility. With that, we went and talked to various financial institutions, and their answer was, we're really interested, but you need the approval, the agreement from the province that, in fact, this is going to go forward before we can lend you money. Because under the new model, we have to borrow the money, we have to pay the bills, we have to do the life cycle management. The government is no longer going to paint the walls, repair the roof, fix the plumbing. It's now going to be on us. So we have briefed more politicians than I care to remember. What are we up to? About 20, give or take, in various governments. We actually did put in a formal ask with filling out the template that the government has for the costing out of a nursing home in March. They committed to giving us an answer by the end of March. We still don't have that answer. So now we're asking people to support us and to sign a letter of support, and I saw a number of you doing that. But if you have friends who want to sign it, they can do it online, they can do it the hard copy, and all of that is greatly appreciated.
That was Caroline Davies from the Passamaquoddy Lodge Foundation.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to look at what the team's doing next week.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. So we've got a few things that we're going to sort of start to pick away at. We do have the right to information request from the town of St. Andrews on the Wharf, and there are so many documents, you guys. So I'm just going slowly through those documents and trying to find a path forward with all of those documents.
Okay, well, have a great weekend. I know that you enjoy your in-depth research, so I look forward to what your findings are and where you go with this. You know what? I'm so happy that I've said for the last few weeks, I'm going to get to Graham and Ann, and I did. And it was beautiful. Graham and Ann's always beautiful. I want to give a special shout out right now to Selena Leonard, because whenever I say I'm going to Graham and Ann, there's coconut cream pie at the CHCO. So this is just my big thank you. It's my favorite part of my trip is stopping in to see my island friends, have a piece of pie, and then I get on the ferry to go home. So it's always a special way. Go visit Swallowtail Lighthouse. So Graham and Ann, I love you. I had the best time, and I'll be back soon.
I have deep regrets about not eating the pie when I was there, because I remember looking at it and going, my blood sugar is maybe not going to cooperate with me. So I have regrets, but I will go back.
I may
have
a pie. I may have a whole pie with me. No joke. You have pie at the CHCO, and you bring pie on the ferry because you want to have some. You don't want to be sad when you get home. It's a whole thing.
These are traditions.
These are traditions that I have. I love going to the island, and it had been a while since I'd been over, so it was nice to get back and spend the whole day there. But next time, I think I want to stay a couple days.
We do have a few councils coming up. St. Andrews, Eastern Charlotte, and then we have another St. Stephen meeting later this month, and so everything is back in full swing at the municipal level. The holidays are over, the break is over, everybody's back to the table.
Another important date we have coming up for residents of St. Andrews is February 11th for a public hearing of objections.
That's right. So that will happen at 6 p.m. in the council chambers at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex. And this is about the municipal plan. And as you've heard us talk a little bit about here, the community, some of the community is sort of confused by the municipal plan about the densification that we keep hearing about. And so that's sort of where people are at. And I expect there to be a significant turnout to that meeting. Normally, public hearing of objections goes very quickly because there's usually not many people there or no one there. And so I expect this one to be a bit different. And I will also have a story coming about the zoning bylaw, which is also sort of coming up for a public hearing of objections as well.
Always a busy time when it comes to municipal plans. I know Graham and Anders too, we talked about the rural plan with Mayor Bonnie Morse as well when we were over on the island. So a lot on the table for councils.
It's a lot of change. I mean, you've got to think that in addition to being amalgamated into areas that they weren't before, these are new community members who are also getting a whole lot of rules. But also the town, the center of town is sort of questioning the density of what they're proposing. There's a new building on Water Street that people are sort of afraid is how the downtown might move forward. It's a beautiful building, but it's certainly there's fear because people have chosen to live in St. Andrews for its intimacy and sort of its the way that it looks because it's a National Historic District and all of that. So there will be a lot of conversation. I think potentially there is an opportunity for council to sort of say, okay, maybe this isn't for us to decide. Maybe we sort of need to leave this to the next council. And this is the greatest opportunity and probably the only opportunity they'll have to sort of say, okay, maybe this isn't for us to decide.
Okay, all right, and that's February 11th. And like you say, we've got municipal elections coming up in May. So for those of you who watch this show every week, now that we're getting closer and closer, we can say we're weeks away at this point. We will be getting into what that means. If you're a candidate, if you're a voter, it's going to be fun to break this all down. I'm sure people, especially in bigger communities in Charlotte County like St. Stephen, we've seen people already on social media who are running, make their declarations if they're running for mayor. You're going to see a lot of that coming out in the weeks ahead. I know that there's talk in every single community of who's running. Some people are waiting to declare. Some people are ready to get their campaign underway. So I actually think it's going to be a really exciting municipal election season. A lot of people in Charlotte County care about local politics, and this is the level where things happen. It really is a special, and she gets me more excited about municipal government than I ever thought I would be in my life. But it is going to be a fun time, and we'll have a lot. We'll be doing interviews with all the councillor candidates, as long as it's not an acclamation, because that obviously serves no purpose if they're being acclaimed. Though I guess it could. We'll debate this. Tell us what you think. Maybe you want to get to know them first. We'll see. We'll see how we get underway. But again, write us at news@chco.tv. If you have advice, concerns, feedback, we are open to what you'd like to see, especially as we head into election season.
I get more and more nervous as the date approaches. Every month I get more nervous. It's a lot of work.
I'm thinking back to the last one, and St. Stephen, for instance, we had 23 councillor candidates. So what we ended up doing for that, I think St. Andrews, we had 15, and they came in for one-on-one interviews, the same questions, everyone given the same amount of time. And then the mayors, it depends. It's a whole. It depends how many candidates there are, how we move forward. So for St. Stephen with 23, we held a day at the Garceland, and everyone got the same amount of time to make a statement. It felt a little bit, I'm not going to lie, like the first episode of The Bachelor, where they come out of the limo and give a spiel. But it worked. And then we had the mayors do a debate. So we modify how we approach it. It's fair. Broadcasting rules for covering elections are very strict. So it's extremely fair to all the candidates, but we modify depending on how many candidates we have per community.
Yeah, and it's 100% about fairness, right? We have strict rules, as you said, that we have to sort of follow in order to ensure that every candidate is afforded the same opportunity. The other thing that I will say about municipal politics is, unlike at the provincial and federal levels, they have party support. And so, you know, when signage is purchased, it's usually done on behalf of the riding association. Anything that you see from a municipal candidate is done out of their own pocket. And so if they've got election signs or they're paying for advertisements, although we won't be doing that, they've done that out of their own money. And this is because they want to be at the leadership table and they feel very strongly about their community.
And I feel like it is underway now. It really has started. So as the weeks progress, it's going to get even more interesting.
Yes. Thanks for watching this week Uncut. We'll see you next week. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.